Good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to figure out what the future holds for smarter buildings. In case you're wondering who we are listed on a profiles page on mondaylive.org. And also worth pointing out that the views expressed here in the next hour are personal, not of any company or organization. Just keep that in mind. Let's make this as interactive as possible on the Zoom chat with question, comments, and contributions from the audience. So looking forward to that. And this slide deck, if you want any of the links, is also available on mondaylive.org on the homepage. So this being December, as we've done for the last couple of years, we're doing a bit of a sort of retrospective what's been going on this last 12 months. So looking forward to that conversation here today. And specifically today, we'll sort of do the retrospective from the perspective of our individual takes on what happened over the course of the last 12 months. So looking forward to that. But before that, as always, hand it over to Mr. Sinclair.
Thanks, Anto. Lots going on at Automated Buildings. We, of course, are preparing our education sessions for AHR. It's coming along really well, getting all our folks joining us. We've created these flyouts. I guess the term is kind of confusing. Anto and I were just talking about that. So what we've done is on top of the agenda, we are basically spinning out pages that where we can provide a little bit more information about the speakers and give you a little bit of insight. So when you come to the sessions, you're prepared for what's going to happen. The cloud native one I'm particularly proud of that. And I think Monday Live should be proud of that too, because I think we had a lot of discussion about that. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, so this session is looking forward. If you actually click on those, I've actually changed to pictures, from words to pictures, because the pictures are 1,000 words, and when you click on them, they actually connect to several thousands of words and websites. Also, we have the evolution and implementation of AI. It's being led by Tracy, that's one of our members here. Looking, again, a great session, and it's going to be lots of interesting discussion there. We've got Troy Harvey as well on that, and Keith Gibson, and the guy from Cochrane. His name misses me there, and I can't read the small print. I'm getting too old. Anyway, in addition to that, I found some resources that are kind of interesting. The one is the Open Source Ecosystem Environmental, Sustainable, and Climate Change. And this is just basically a connection to a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. I was kind of interested that our industry was listed as consumption. Hadn't really thought about it much, but that's who we are in the climate change equation. And in the sustainability equation, we basically just consume all of these resources, and we need to do a better job of doing that. Another great resource I just found is this IoT World Education, Internet of Things. And this is basically a bunch of education that's been put together by Open .eu, the European organizations, and there's a lot of great information there, and it's all free because it was developed for their own uses. So definitely worthwhile clicking on these pictures and getting most of the information. So all of the pictures here have underneath them a link. I'll send you the link while we're chatting. The other thing is, come on out to our anniversary in AHR. It's our 25th anniversary, and we'll be having a celebration there, and we want to tell you the new direction of where Automated Buildings is going. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. I was looking at this article in InfoWorld. I've been reading InfoWorld for decades now, and it's talking about predictions with respect to the cloud. Interesting sort of piece. Really, there's three points that it makes in terms of what they think is important with regards to the cloud. First of all, is that the cloud really needs to be optimized for AI. Right, so there's a discussion about that because AI is happening, and obviously the cloud is part of how AI happens. So just thinking through AI and the across the cloud is kind of an interesting thing that it talks about. Talks about the talent, the workforce side of things, saying that the companies really must control their own talent supply chain within ecosystems. So that's another interesting thing. And the last point is that it feels that business will drive a lot of cloud innovation. So there's a lot of cloud innovation, and we're obviously in the middle of all of that in our discussions, and the needs for outcomes. To your point, Mark, is really it's going to drive a lot of innovation. So anyway, I just thought that's an interesting piece that I want to share. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick. It's this week, right?
Yeah, that's our office hours is this this Thursday at 11 o'clock Eastern time. And we're really making a lot of progress on the things that we're going to show at AHR and what we're going to be demonstrating with the IBB. So this office hours would be a good opportunity for more people to learn a little bit about what the status of IBB is, what the plans are for AHR, and how they can participate. And InfoWorld, holy cow! I think we're going to dig up some old old InfoWorld and get out the old Robert X. Cringely rumor mill and see what they were predicting back in the 1990s. See whether they were anywhere near right. Glad you threw up that headline. That was kind of cool. Blast from the past.
And obviously, Smarter Summit coming up in now. I can actually say next month. Oh, that scares me. Yeah, in Chicago. So we're looking forward to that. We'll hopefully be able to talk a lot more about that in the next couple of weeks. So really looking forward to that. And link board, as always, just going to skip past that. Any other thoughts? Anything else anybody want to bring up before we move on? Nope. Okay. Let us move on then. So retrospective. So what I did, I was doing this over the weekend, is to just look at what we've been doing on Monday Live for the past year. And this is really what I came up with. These are the 12 months of themes in 2023. So in January and February, we were obviously around the Smarter Summit that happened in the beginning of February. So we were preparing for it in January, and we had this sort of whole theme of Smarter Together coming out of the Smarter Summit. So that was really a lot of fun. Then we dove into AI, thinking about what that's all about in the context of buildings. We spent quite a bit of time on clouds and buildings in April, the whole month of that. And then we touched on climate change in May. And then we dug into what networks are all about, smarter networks, we called it. And then we talked about disrupting buildings in July. And that's was the month when we made this sort of declaration that we believe that in 2030, buildings will be inherently cloud native. So cloud native building vision, that was kind of when that was sort of discussed. Took a break in August, and we spent September talking about the changing landscape of technology, of experience, and of the business side of things, and then spent months talking about industry metamorphosis in terms of how the industry is sort of has evolved in the past few decades, and the last month all about system of systems. So that's kind of a lot if you sort of step back and look at this, and that's kind of the whole intent of this week is to think about what did we learn out of all of this. So I'll leave this slide up and just sort of ask the panel if they have any sort of thoughts of the last 12 months that we've had together. Any specific thoughts?
Well, I'm happy to start off. So, all right. So my experience in 23 has been varied. During the first half of the year, I was involved quite a bit in trying to get analytics platforms up and running in buildings. And what I came to really appreciate is how fundamentally difficult that still is. Despite efforts to normalize data and be able to convert data from one format to another, starting out with a physical approved secure connection into the building, and then being able to take that data and transform it into something that's usable remains a considerable challenge. Now, when I look at our discussion here, particularly in the latter half of the year, we've focused on that, in my opinion, that fundamental issue in a variety of ways, including the need for what we've euphemistically called the IBB, or the interoperable building blocks, and then sort of dug into why that's necessary, and it pointed out that the world is moving. Yes, we've established some standardized protocols, but applications really are where the future resides, and we want to have applications be able to easily access data, and be able to have that data from one application to another, and also in recognition those applications are going to live in places that we're not used to seeing them, namely on our phones and on our and in cloud platforms. And so that whole area has changed fundamentally. But at the start of all this is, how do you actually get into the building and get permission to access the data, and then have the data available to you in a usable fashion? And to me, this is the fundamental issue that I feel all of our months of effort have really talked about. Even going back to the Smarter Summit, where we focused on specifying how to make buildings smarter from a communication standpoint, it was really largely an effort to say, hey, on new construction, here are the things that specifying engineers and owners ought to be doing to make their buildings look more likely to be able to be connected in the future. So, but fundamentally, at an industry level, we got a lot of work to do to make this plug and play. Being the analogy of taking your phone and downloading an application from Google or Apple, right? We're so far away from that right now, in my opinion. And so I look at this year as being a journey around identifying the issues, proposing potential architectural changes to them, whether they be the cloud native architecture we talked about, the IBB we've talked about, the need for modeling of data through Haystack or Brick or possible other methodologies. All of this stuff needs to happen if we're going to get to the point where all these disparate systems can share data among themselves, and then users can quickly access the data without having to hire specialists in software to make it all pull together. So that's my sort of summary about what the year was all about.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the ways that I look at this, and it sort of takes me back to the Smarter Summit in Atlanta as well, is that if you look at this slide, and if you look at this slide and didn't know who Monday Live was, or didn't know this group, and didn't know we're into control and automation, you probably wouldn't have guessed this is about control and automation. Right? All of these themes are all about, it's all about information and cloud and data. It's an information centric industry, right? Which is what we said in the Smarter Summit, is that we're really not a controls industry. We're in the industry of information about controls and automation, and that shouts very loudly on this slide to me, which is really what you're saying, Steve, is that it's all about the data and how you get the data out and using it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, exactly right.
On that point, Steve, I agree with you on several points, but not all. But when it comes to data, is this, I still think that, again, we can access the data, as you said, we can normalize it, we can haystack it, brick it, we can do all of that stuff. Getting the data is not a challenge anymore. But having the people who understand data that is related to the built environment is still a major challenge as I see it. Because again, you talk to a data scientist about our data that we gather, we analyze, and they have no clue. Their interest, their knowledge base is around more of the IT type data, the business data, whatever the case is, as far as understanding it, interpreting it, and so forth and so on. So from a data perspective, I think that remains a huge challenge we as an industry face.
Yeah, but Mark, again, my experience this year has been that getting the data can absolutely be a problem, because the facilities engineers often are unfamiliar with the systems that they have in their buildings. They don't have good documentation on them. They don't know whether they are or are not connected to a network. If they have to bring their IT department in, then it opens up a whole conversation around access over the internet to those devices. So before you can even get to the point of what's the data look like, whether it's haystack this or whatever, just the ability to know what's there from a system perspective. What is the system? What is the brand? How old is it? Does it have internet connectivity? Does it communicate in a protocol that we could even take advantage of? Those fundamental pieces of information, I have run into those brick walls multiple times. And that's what I'm saying is we've not advanced to a point where that part of it is easy, because it's not.
Yes, it seems like we have the pieces of technology to get the data and to get it out, but it's just not happening at scale. It's not that it's impossible, it's not that we don't know how to do it. It's just to do it at scale and to do it for the needs of the applications is somewhat missing.
I've been slamming my head against this wall for the past 25 years, Steve. And the thing that is clear is that it's really not a technology problem.
Right.
What we have is a business and a business policy problem. And the fact that the people that are our customers, the facilities people, don't have the clout in their organizations to make a lot of this happen, or the capability, or the connections. That's really the problem. The technology to solve the problem is there, but getting IT cybersecurity approval to connect, even having the ability to have an intelligent conversation with someone is really a challenge in a lot of these places. And that really has not changed much. But what I will say is that as we, march through this journey, we are seeing a lot of people taking more mature attitudes, and certain customers are becoming educated and putting policies in place to deal with these kinds of things. Others are not. What I would say for my biggest interest in the year is the effect of artificial intelligence. ChatBot GPT was introduced only a year ago, and now it comes up in almost every conversation. Whether it should or not is another matter, but it does come up. I think that's interesting.
So I want to tie the three pieces together, right? What Jim just said, you know, it's changing. Mark's point about the data science guys and Steve's point about getting the data. So I agree with you. I think one of the things that the ChatGPT and the whole AI focus has done, Jim, is actually managed to focus in us to go get the data. So now we have a whole bunch of data guys going like, this ChatGPT and AI is actually a real thing. So we'd like to have that in our industry. Therefore, you know, and then they turn to the data guys and the data science guys goes, yeah, but we need data to do that. And that kind of drives back to your point earlier, Jim, about, okay, now we're starting to see some people going like, okay, if I want the AI, I need the data. And if I need the data, I need to go solve getting the data. So
The connectivity issue, right?
yeah, it's kind of joined them all up a little bit. It's driven not 100%, but then to tie it back to Mark's point, I see that still big disconnect too between, okay, you know, the leadership is going, we need AI because that's obviously where everything is. We need data. Data science guys go get data. Data science guys go, I don't know what to do with it. What data we get? Where do we get it from? So there's a gap there as well. So it kind of, if you could almost triangulate the three pieces.
Rick, I think you're about to say something.
Sorry, great timing. I think there's a couple of things I hear, and it's been coming out the whole year, is that sure, the technology has existed to do some buildings and get some data and do it expensively and proprietarily. Sure, the technology has existed. But the technology to do it cheap and in an interoperable and open way has not existed. And I'm channeling Glenn from Harbor Research now and saying, people will come to the industry in droves if we stop making it so proprietary. So you come as a data scientist, you have to learn 15 different manufacturers' proprietary protocols to be able to have a shot at getting information out of a typical campus. And so they stop. Now with the standardization of ontologies and the standardization of networking protocols and everything else, you know, it's getting better, but we're still, and this is what happened this year, I think, is we're just scratching the surface in every one of these areas of making it better, faster, cheaper, taking advantage of modern technology, attracting talent because we're not doing proprietary silos. So I think that's what the year to me meant is that we're starting to awaken to the opportunity to do things in a more standardized, open, interoperable, attractive way. And I think we're on the right track.
So starting to understand how ChatGPT works, I want to pose the following question to the group here. So as our industry starts to actually use it and questions start to get posed that ChatGPT can now find answers to. So in other words, a question gets posed around how to optimize an air handler, how to optimize exhaust fan in a garage, right? And answers start to pop up on the web with regard to that. Much like, you know, when you go looking for answers, you know, if I'm having trouble with a Google or a Microsoft app, a very specific thing within those applications, and I Google that question as opposed to going to the help desk or the help utility, I often get a better answer, or I get 3 or 4 different responses to the answer than I do using Microsoft's or Google's actual help text, right? So my argument is we're so early in this journey that I almost think the problem is going to take care of itself in terms of the data becoming useful to the traditional data scientists who know little about our industry, because as knowledgeable people start to answer these questions and those answers grow in their adoption, then ChatGPT is going to get better and better at crafting the responses. What do you guys think?
Well, that's for sure, especially if you see the whole kerfuffle that happened with the the CEO's ouster. If you kind of dig into some of the background on that, a lot of it was related to what they call it, Q Star, which is their next generation layer of the Chat GPT. So I'm with you too, Steve. I think and just to augment that, even in our business, what we're doing now is segmenting the people who get the data versus the people who use the data and the AI and the machine learning guys, right? In that, to us, it's actually two separate problems. You don't need to be a data science and the data that I get you. You don't need to be an expert in the systems on how I get the data. So we've gone ahead. Okay, we'll take care of all that piece, then have the data guys do what they do and don't worry about how we got the data in the first place and how we cleaned it up and made it quality and stuff. And I think we needed to do that to get scale, right? Because to Mark's point, there's just not enough people who know how to get data and know what to do with the data. There's just not enough folks to do that. So we have to compartmentalize it a little bit, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I guess my fundamental
look.
argument is that the nature of the technology is self-scaling.
Yeah.
As information gets added, it just has almost an exponential effect across industries.
I have a slightly different perspective on whether you need general data scientists to be able to look at this technology. From my point of view, all the companies that are seriously in the analytics business have had data scientists looking at this, especially the what I call physical world data, sensors and actuators, voltage, pressures, temperatures, things that traditional data scientists tend not to look at in IT. We've been doing that in the industry for 20 years. All the companies that are seriously in the analytics business have already done that. I view the interesting place as starting from something you mentioned, Steve, before, which is the applications that people can do. And I think that the real trouble we're hitting is not having it's not that we don't have enough people to look at the data. We have many companies that have already done that. We don't have enough acceptance of those end applications in the business. Those applications can be things like fault detection, diagnostics, optimization. They could be accounting, they could be maintenance management. But how customers interact with the applications, and especially the enabling technologies like IT security and the ability to actually connect, it's policy-related things that I think are the stumbling block, not the number of data scientists that we can throw after it. I view the data science problem as solved for most of the applications in the industry already.
Well, and ChatGPT will hasten that analytics process, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I have kind of a combination question comment coming back a little bit to when I think it was Steve and Anna were talking, but one of the tricky things that we face, and I'll even harken back to what Jim said in his opening comment about 20 years of doing this. In Lundmark, we tried to standardize devices at the device level, still are forever and ever. And in those use cases, we're looking, let's say, at multiple manufacturers of thermostats and trying to find all the common variables and the common functionality there to create a profile for a thermostat. And in the end, what you end up with is the minimum cross-section of variables across all manufacturers, and everything else becomes optional, right? So in even today, and that's been going on forever and ever, and I think Lundmark made some really good progress in doing that. But even today, the challenge that we have, and even a simple retail kind of a system, is every sensor is different. Every manufacturer provides different variables. Trying to bring all this in, get it normalized, tagged, all of that is still a difficult, getting the data is pretty straightforward, but getting it to in a normalized fashion, you can do something with it is still tricky. But my question part of this is, do you guys, were you saying that AI, possibly something like Chat GPT, could actually eliminate the need for a lot of this normalization effort that we've been so focused on for 10 years or more? Because you feed this enough data, it will start to recognize these are, room temperatures, these are supply air temperatures, these are whatever it might be. Do you think we're going to be able to leapfrog some of our effort by using something like a Chat GPT to eliminate that need?
Or large language models is what you're talking about. Yes. Yeah, that's something we see.
I worry about there not being enough data in our area to train these systems well so far, because what we do is so niche, Tracy. I certainly think that the technology will get better and riper. And of course, as we all generate more and more data, 5 years ago, our experiments with AI is that even, with 25 years worth of analytics data and mappings and jobs, we didn't have enough to make it get any better than 80%. And I think with breakthroughs in AI, maybe that's better now. But I worry about the training set. If you look at the number of buildings that are mapped, the number of mappings that even exist, is that enough to really train a large language model? It's, several orders of magnitude different than the kind of information that's on the internet in terms of the use of the English language or other things. So, not sure we've got enough yet to do a good job.
Yeah, and I don't know realistically what it takes, but this reminds me of I in our GWAC days, Vint Cerf spoke at one point in time, and so I know you were there for that. And his premise was, look, you guys are wasting your time with energy management and savings, because we're going to figure out how to supply free, boundless energy anyway. So we won't need energy management, right? That was his prediction. And I kind of feel the same way with AI, that it will snowball in a snowball sort of a fashion, accelerate our ability to identify and utilize data. And going through a lot of the stuff that we go through currently is going to get obsoleted. And I'll tell you what led me to that is I have people in my organization who aren't data scientists, who aren't necessarily all that technical, feeding data into Chat GPT and doing some kind of interesting things already, right? And every time they do it, it gets a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And there's not a lot of data. We're talking, a few spreadsheets worth of data kind of thing. So I just see that accelerating to the point where somebody is going to figure out how to train it enough to recognize when data's coming at it, with some high level of predictability that, hey, this is a supply air temp, or this, in the heating mode, or this is a zone temperature, or whatever it might be, kind of a thing. I'm oversimplifying, but I think you guys get the drift.
So the specific question was,
Is AI going to eliminate the need for all the data normalization efforts that we've been going through for the last 10 years?
okay, meaning all the semantic work.
Right.
Done. But if the answer to that is yes, it'll be a little bit sad because we've been wasting a lot of time, but I'm not saying it's yes.
I don't think we've been wasting time. In fact, the work that we've been doing is helping train the models, to be honest. So it's not that we've been, I think we're just going to get an accelerator bump on that. And from my perspective, the answer is yes, Tracy. I see that already.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of the comments. I work clearly you have to, everyone says double check all the data and garbage in, garbage out. All of that is is absolutely true. But while all of that is going on, guess what? It's learning and getting better, and we're correcting it to get better every time that happens, right? So it just seems to be accelerating to me. And I don't know what that acceleration rate really is. Does that mean, you know, something that we've been working on in 10 years is going to get solved in 3? Or is it going to be another 10 years or whatever?
So, Ken, do you have a thought? And just I'm just going around the everyone here to make sure that they have an opportunity of saying what their thoughts about this sort of this past year. Ken, you're muted.
Give me go mute. Okay. Yes, I think it has been great discussions. It also has been driving a lot of things, new products, evolving new concepts. I think not directly, but a lot of this stuff is happening simultaneously in the industry. And it's good that we discuss it. And I'm not talking about any one of the particular months. I'm talking about all of the months. Is we're dealing with topics that people are startups are doing, projects are coming on. The stuff is moving much more rapid than I think we actually believe. It's been my experiences that I go to Monday Live, and then I'm talking to my new advertisers, and they're thinking the same thoughts, and we're all trying to figure out how to do this together. And I think in my mind, it's all about communication, as we need to basically share what it is we're talking about here and bring more people into the conversation. LinkedIn has been a great resource for us as an industry. It's where I'm always amazed at the quality of chats that break out there and the discussion that goes on, sometimes similar to what we do here on Monday Live, and we actually are able to get that documented. And as much as possible, I see my job in all of this is to just try and keep this community library going as we have for the last 25 years, just basically turn it over to the community and let them keep pushing it on. We need more groups like Monday Live that are willing to discuss in an open format like this. And then I just dumped on the chat there how I've kind of taken the Monday Live sessions and pulled them into at least a history, at least a URL that we can go back to in history. One of my criticisms with social media is that it's so time sensitive that if you don't happen to be reading the social media at the time it's there, it's very difficult to retrieve some of those amazing discussions that go on. So I try to reach out and link them back and somehow get them documented. But communication of change, I think, is great. I think Monday Live has done a great job. I support you to the hilt. We've had a diverse bunch of information. And I think the Smarter Summit is another piece of this that allows us all to just keep going on with that communication. And the AI is like it's like communication on steroids. This basically is able to grab all of this information and turn it into new thought. And I'm hoping that Automated Buildings is a source where it can see a lot of this information, not only with not only the information is there, but the history of the information. And I've actually seen a few AI things that I've poked where it actually had to have read 4 or 5 articles to get that kind of a response. So, or at least the opinions of the people that I was talking about in the articles. So that's sort of my take on it. It's just
That's kind of interesting, Ken. It's kind of interesting, Ken, because without you writing the content of the material, ChatGPT has nothing to work on, right? I mean, so if you weren't doing what you're doing and everybody else contributing all the data sources that you're doing, ChatGPT would be meaningless.
Actually, it's interesting because that's what we really need is we not only need GP to use this information, it needs to now realize that if I'm going to have great information, I need to be constantly upgrading my knowledge as people. As AI has to start thinking like people, and that's as people, that's what we think. We need to learn more. How can I learn more at the most rapid rate? And it needs to ask itself that same question. And,
so Ken, a question to you, Ken. You obviously talk to a lot of people in the industry, quite a diverse set of people. Do you think that this sort of move towards data and information that we've been talking about, is really about the amount of data and the quality data and everything else, we're moving into the information industry? Do you think most people in the industry are generally well aligned with this? Maybe the tactics and the way we're all doing it slightly different, but do you think that this is really a sort of a movement by the whole industry to go down the data and information direction? Do you see that?
Definitely. And the use of AI is in everybody's mind. The use of cloud native is in everybody's mind. In one of our discussions, we said this is as significant as the move from pneumatics to DDC, is the move from where we were a year ago to where we're going with AI and cloud native kind of thinking. And basically, where we always kind of fought IoT, we now clearly understand we're a piece of that, and we have a lot of value to bring to the game, and they have a lot of mythology that has been used over the years that we can build on, and there's reasons why they've created their systems the way they have, and we created ours the way ours are. So yes, there's a lot of mashup, but we're I see us in a transition period as significant as the movement from pneumatic to DDC.
Okay. I forgot to keep track of who's had their opportunity of chiming in on the year. Who has not? Mark, have you?
No, I just made a comment about Steve. So
Go for it.
As I see it, I look at 2023 as a major shift in the industry, continuing on some of the topics we've talked about on Monday Live, but mainly in the conversations have changed. When you're talking to the people who are prospects for all the stuff we all sell and we bring to market, their perspectives and their thoughts are different now today than they were in 2022, 2021. And again, take into account COVID, forget, we've been there, done that. But still, it is, we as an industry are being asked to do more with the technology that we already have. That's one. Two, the artificial intelligence conversation, which we've talked about already. Three, the continued evolving workplace. Again, there is still, it's still evolving. There is no pat answer. While most people, several are following a certain way, the hybrid 3 days a week or whatever, it's still not universal. I think 4, that the owners and operators are looking for universal automation, and they're looking for that shift to become really data-centric operations to piggyback on what Ken just said. And I think their outcomes are a little different than they were over the last 5 years. So that's where I kind of see this.
Okay. And generally, do you see alignment in the industry as well? I'll ask the same question that I asked Ken.
I see an alignment in and around data-centric, data being the foundation for the industry. But I don't see I still see a major bridge that we all have to cross to really move this forward, 2024 and onwards from there.
Great. Anybody else want to talk about 23? I see Toby has got his hand up, so I'll bring him in otherwise. I'm going to bring him in anyway. Toby, I'm bringing you on. Assuming you still want to do this. There you go. Okay, Toby, the floor is yours. If you can unmute.
I didn't even realize I had a hand up. But so
ahead.
what was the question again? So I answer the right one.
Well, this is what we've gone through the whole year here. What's what you see on the slide, and this is just a conversation as to trying to identify what mattered to each of us. And since you're on, what did you get out of this year?
Well, I like the movement into the IBB a lot. I think formal interfaces between things will continue to become more important. What we've been terming connections, because those become use cases, those become the interoperability points. Those become, and we don't have a plug for radios and a plug for televisions and a plug for lamps. We have a plug. That formal interface hides the complexity behind it. We need to have those. Systems of systems are going to become more important. Obviously, the entire Internet 3 or spatial web, depending upon which one you call it, is going to come to the fore, and we're going to be participants in it. And they're going to not be integrating at the level of complexity that we have now. Right now, you get a master integrator who is has been in the industry forever and therefore can figure out what all the disparate things mean because he's learned them all separately and independently. That there are not enough integrators in the world who have time to learn deep depths of 4 or 5 different protocol suites or sets of devices and industries. It's going to have to be with simple meanings, simple things. So that's going to come out. That's going to make messages between systems smaller, which more consistent, which means more susceptible to AI and ML. Right now, there's a huge hole in cybersecurity for Internet of Things, because you can't tell if something's hacked. One, the diversity of software is so great. Second of all, the diversity of behavior is so great. And you really can't, it's unclear whether a thermostat being broken just because, or hit with a hammer, or having gum placed over a sensor, or being a hack. Those are indistinguishable. You just can't see what they are. So there has to be ways to, and the best way for me to hack your system, which might be fully secure, might be to take a less secure system, and there's always going to be less secure systems, and have it start lying to you. So I think we're going to get to the point as we start focusing on systems of systems more, where cybersecurity is based upon noticing that a behavior is not acting the way it has in the past in this location. And that's going to be very important, I think. And the only way we can do that is inside an IBB. We're going to have, we talk about large language, artificial intelligence. I think we're going to see it in very small language, artificial intelligence, the ML side of space. This thing is not responding to messages the way it usually does. Now I don't trust it as part of my system of systems. So I think I'm very wary of the large language stuff. There's too many lies. Made up whole research papers with whole false references across the entire research paper. AI is too eager to please somebody or other. And so I wouldn't rely on that for any mission critical stuff, but knowing that something's acting a little wonky. They say that if you have a stroke, there's a few symptoms that if you see your friend across the table from you starting to have a saggy face or slurring words or having a limp arm, that you're supposed to respond and do something. That's what the ML is going to do about the interactions between systems of systems. It's going to notice things that neither system notices about behavior changing. So is ML AI? Well, that's definitional. But I think my definition says it's the same set of math, it's the same set of techniques and programming, but it's humbler and it's limited. And it's optimized particularly for having secure communications between two actors, which in a zero trust world they have to be. I may not even be able to read the message as a security actor, but I can notice that the patterns of messages are changing, the shape of them. And so well-characterized messages, well-characterized sizes are going to be a key enabler of that. And that goes back to connections. So that's what I've been thinking about this year is watching the system of systems. Because I just don't think with the complexity of what's in the world, we can somehow wave our hands and say AI is going to understand it all. I just don't see that. Over.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks.
with Toby, I just want to confirm a statement you made that in part, you think that the IBB can help to, I'll call it, normalize the security protection of all the downstream systems by basically enforcing a consistent methodology for securing those systems from as well as the potential to run some sort of ML analysis on system behavior within its own confines without having to do that externally, meaning, through independent, disparate evaluations. It could all be done in the context of the IBB itself. Is that?
I think so. Yes, it is, because to me, the essence of cloud native computing is that you have common things whose behavior is changed by changing the message patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got something that's watching the message patterns and learning what they are for this building in this case at this time of year. They're always going to change, but if they start changing consistently or faster than usual or something or other, those are the real cybersecurity events that we will find in the future.
Good.
And that means that while we're talking right now, all the system of systems being flood traffic and the HVAC and the whatever, all the industry verticals, there's the apps that are just going to be watching those guys, which need a place to live in that little cloud in the basement, just like the apps do.
So what really I find amazing is that a year ago, I can't recall, and I might watch the December of 2022 show later on today. But a year ago, it's certainly in 22, we weren't talking about data. We weren't talking about the quality and the quantity of data and the aggregation and the management of that, anything like what we're talking about today. Right, we were talking about other things. We were talking about real estate and buildings and sort of the physical stuff. And the conversation today has been really all about data, about the quality and the quantity and the right kind of data. I think, Jim, you refer to that as data sufficiency.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is really what it's about, right? Having the right data, the right amount of data, and the right context and everything else, so that you can actually do something with it.
And there are two schools of thought on this, Anto. One is statistically derived things, which is you look at all the data that you have and you see what the data tells you. And another is having a preconceived notion as to what you can do with the data, because you already understand the physics of the situation, the physical model. And both of those analysis techniques have value. Knowing the data sufficiency you have to prosecute those physical models with physics is very important. Discerning what you can just by looking at things from a statistical standpoint is useful, but tends to find what I call gold nuggets or needle in a haystack problems. rather than recurring value, which is predictable.
So for our quick fire question that I'm going to ask, Ken, I think Ken was saying that he feels that what we're going through right now is as transformational as the move between pneumatic and DDC. And I'm wondering if the group agrees with that, sort of yay and nay and take the fifth. So Ken, I'll start with you. I think there's a yay. Yay. Just put your thumb up. Steve, do you think this is a transformational moment in time right now?
Yes.
Tracy?
Definitely.
I'm wondering if anybody's going to say no. Mark?
Yes.
Rick?
Way bigger.
Anna?
2 thumbs.
2 hands.
Man, I don't have enough thumbs.
If you do 2 thumbs on a Mac these days, you get.
I know you get. I did that the other day. There you go.
Sorry, Jim
Yes.
and Toby.
You also get the. So it'll come up.
All right, so I would agree. So this is unanimous. Does anybody in the audience want to disagree with this group? You have like 10 seconds to make your point. No, we'll continue this conversation in the next couple of weeks. But this has been a great conversation, and yeah, it's been a good year. And we'll continue the next couple of weeks. We'll probably spend next week talking quite a bit about the Smarter Summit that's coming up in Chicago. And then the week after, we'll talk about what we're all expecting out of 2024. Isn't that exciting? So with that, let's wrap, and hope everybody has a great week. Thank you all.
Thanks
Very
all.
good. Thanks,
Thank
Al.
you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.